Prenuptial agreements are agreements that parties come to before they get married. It's usually better to come to them a good while before you get married. Sometimes folks get the bright idea of coming up with a prenup. We're getting married in a week. It's like, okay, everybody's scrambling trying to figure that out. But it's where the parties have decided it's in their best interest, and it isn't always, but sometimes is, it's up to the parties, that they ought to have an agreement that sets out what they will do in the event of a divorce. It often comes up when one party has assets they want to protect and keep as their own, rather than follow the trend or the black letter law of the law on how those assets get distributed in the event of a divorce. So in some states, anything that one does after one gets married becomes marital doings, and those marital doings become marital assets, and those marital assets get distributed according to what the state law says. In Georgia, that's equitable distribution, for example. And most judges hear equitable and think that means equal, and they divide it 50-50. So if you own a business and you want to make sure that regardless of what happens down the road, it remains your business, it's a good idea to strike up a prenup that talks about what happens with the business. Another thing that can happen is talking about alimony. It wouldn't be a bad idea necessarily if one party has a whole lot of assets and the other one doesn't, to say, okay, in the event of divorce, I want to go ahead and lay out what alimony I receive so that we don't have this battle when we're angry with each other. So if we get divorced in 5 years, I want it to spell out that I get, just fill in the blank, $50,000 a year. If we get divorced in 10 years, I want it to spell out that I get $100,000 a year. It is much better to have those discussions not in the heat of the moment where people are angry with each other. That doesn't mean that this isn't an emotional issue, though, because as you think about it, these are two people who are about to be betrothed to each other. They've sworn their undying love to each other, and this is somewhat of a rude issue to be thrown into that mix. But given the two times to have this conversation, when you are both attached to each other and thinking that this will never happen, or when you are at each other's throats, it is much better to have these difficult conversations early on when you're all still on the same page and you're far more likely to go, yes, I still want to get married to you. The issue of prenups safeguarding family inheritances is largely, I think, inaccurate. Because in most scenarios, and this is not true of all 50 states, let me talk about Georgia in particular, what you inherit is yours and cannot become marital property unless you choose to use the term of art and law, gift. If you choose to gift that to the marriage, then it becomes marital property. So how does one gift that to the marriage? Well, for example, your mom passes and leaves you $250,000. And so now you've got that $250,000, and what do you do with it? You put it into a joint account. You just gifted that to the marriage. So long as you have that $250,000 that your mom left to you and you put it into an account that is solely in your name, it can't be touched. It cannot be touched. As a matter of separation of division of the property, equitable division of the property, the caveat to that would be, while your spouse would never get a portion of that in the division of the property, it is possible for your spouse to say, well, he's got $250,000 sitting as an account, I should get more alimony. That is a possible argument. I don't see it as prevailing. There are other good reasons to get a prenup, but if the sole purpose is to safeguard family inheritance, look at the cost of that prenup and how involved that prenup is going to be and how difficult it is to convince your soon-to-be spouse to sign that prenup before you decide that that's the route you want to go, because it's nice on paper, but it isn't necessary. Having the prenup conversation with your soon-to-be spouse is not going to be easy. It'd be odd for it to be easy. But like every crucial conversation that comes up, it's one that if you don't raise it, it only gets worse. So I guess the first issue would be, if it has crossed your mind, it probably ought to come up. If it hasn't crossed your mind, why the heck are you watching this video anyway? But if it has crossed your mind, it isn't going to go away. And if you don't raise it, if you don't have that discussion, what we have learned about crucial conversations is that they only get worse. When they do finally come up, The passage of time only makes them more explosive. And until they come up, you only eat yourself up. All right, somatic response to stress. You'll get ulcers. You'll develop enemies that don't exist. It's wicked. So if you are having an inkling that this is something that troubles you, it is a very good idea to bring this subject up with your spouse, soon-to-be spouse, and see how you feel about it and see how they feel about it, and bring it up early enough that you can walk away from the table and live with it for a couple of days, what you both said, and then come back and rejoin the conversation. The other issue is, if you go to any pre-marriage counseling, they'll tell you, have a conversation with your soon-to-be spouse about the finances, right? About everything that you do. What kind of ties do you want me to wear? No, don't have that conversation. But how should we handle our finances? Should we have joint accounts? I heard somebody lecture recently that, how can you call it a marriage if you don't have joint accounts? I don't go that far. I don't think that's necessary. But I think it is necessary for you and your spouse or soon-to-be spouse to be on the same page about that very critical issue, right? So if you're going to have that conversation about, and how will we pay the mortgage, and how are we going to purchase the cars? Will they only be in your name? Will they be in our name? All those conversations. And a part of that is, and what will we do financially in the event of divorce? Only good can come from it if it is already occurring to you. Only good can come from it if you go ahead and make it as bright as day, right? Transparency. Prenups can't set couples up for failure. And I say that as a policy statement because what you're doing is, if nothing else, conditioning yourselves to approach difficult conversations. Because you're probably pretty sure that sometime during the course of your marriage, you're going to have some difficult conversations. Even if it's only, should we get a German Shepherd or a Labradoodle? You're going to have some difficult conversations. And so it's a good idea to go ahead and start practicing those and having those. That's what will keep a marriage together, is to be able to work through those inevitable difficult conversations on many, many different topics. And this is a crucial one. So there's no way that a prenup can make it more likely that you get divorced. A prenup can actually make it more likely that you stay together. One, because you've set out the terms should you get a divorce, but the other part about it is, I have a strong bias that people are more likely to stay married if they take the approach that I could walk away any day. So what's the converse of that? If you're in good terms, what's the converse of that? Today, I choose not to. Today, I choose to stay with you, and here's the way in which I, at least on a subliminal basis, if not consciously expressed, choose to make that happen. Here are the actions that I take to stay in the game and enjoy my time with you. And I think a prenup makes that more likely rather than is a divisive document. If you are fixing to get married and you're thinking somewhere that maybe a prenup is something you ought to investigate, easy enough. Pick up the phone, call, give us an email, get in touch with us. We'll be happy to answer those questions.